So rumor has it, Daniel Dubois has already signed his contract for an Anthony Joshua fight at Wembley in September. And he's just waiting for AJ's signature now. This is all rumor at the moment. It's all hearsay, nothing's confirmed. But in my estimation, it seems very likely that this will happen. In fact, I'd be surprised if it didn't happen. Because as far as I'm concerned, there's no better option on the table for either guy right now. In my mind, the only way that AJ wouldn't fight Daniel Dubois next is if the Usyk-Fury rematch didn't happen and AJ got an opportunity to fight either Fury or Usyk instead, or if Fury fights Daniel Dubois instead. But those scenarios notwithstanding, then I fully expect AJ Dubois to happen. Because you look at the other options on the table for AJ, and there's really nothing. A Joseph Parker rematch, I mean, nobody wants to see that. The first fight was the most boring of AJ's whole career, and although Joseph Parker's coming off 2 good wins, the performances were once again boring. So while he does have an interim title, Joseph Parker, WBO interim, there's no public clamor for that fight. Some might say AJ versus Zheli Zhang, but again, Zhang doesn't have any type of belt. And although he's coming off a good win against Deontay Wilder, it cannot match the kind of box office appeal that a Daniel Dubois fight has. 2 British fighters, potentially the IBF title on the line because Daniel Dubois is now interim champion with the IBF. There's rumors that he might actually get elevated to full IBF champion. And of course, for Daniel Dubois, he's been chasing the AJ fight for years. He's coming off 2 good wins, 2 exciting wins. His name's ringing bells. He's young, he's only 26 years of age. He's hit a run of form. The AJ fight makes complete sense for him too. The question is, how would that fight go? Well, I'm certainly not one of these people who dismisses Daniel Dubois' chances, because there are apparently a lot of people who do. They were so impressed by AJ knocking out an MMA guy in Ngannou, and a guy that he sparred hundreds of rounds with and got the better of in the gym, and also beating the amateurs in Otto Wallin. Those were 2 good confidence builders for Anthony Joshua, but I wasn't so impressed by those performances as many other people, all things considered. I expected Anthony Joshua, particularly in the Ngannou fight, to win without any trouble at all. I didn't buy into the whole Ngannou hype. Daniel Dubois is a much more difficult proposition for Anthony Joshua than Francis Ngannou ever was. More difficult than Otto Wallin too. More dangerous than both those guys. Number one, because of his youth, his energy. He's got better stamina than Anthony Joshua, a better work rate than Anthony Joshua. He's more fearless than AJ is. He's willing to run red lights and take risks in order to land his shots. And we saw in his last 2 fights with his dad ringside, I think that gives Daniel Dubois a lot more confidence and belief and makes him feel a lot more comfortable when his dad's there. And also Don Charles in the corner. We've seen that he's not so easily discouraged anymore when he starts getting hit with shots, when he has this setup. So much of boxing is about psychology. A fighter has to feel comfortable in the ring, mentally, in order to get the best out of themselves. Dubois has kind of a childlike quality about his personality, and much like a young schoolboy fighter, he needs his dad there for moral support, to feel emboldened, to feel brave. And it might seem a little strange to some of us because Dubois is a fully grown adult now, but at the end of the day, if it works, it works. So as I say, he's bringing a lot of energy to the table. He's willing to take risks. He's got better stamina than AJ. I want to say he's got a better chin than AJ too, although Dubois in the past has seemed vulnerable to shots on top of the head. He was hurt in the Richard Lartey fight with a shot on top of the head. A lot of people didn't catch it. It's not in that big crazy exchange they had in the fight. No, that's not when Dubois got hurt with a shot on top of the head. It was at the beginning of one of the rounds. It might have been the beginning of round 2 or round 3. The commentators didn't even pick up on it, but I saw it. You go watch that fight. At the start of round 2 or round 3, Lartey hits Dubois with a right hand on top of his head, and Dubois' back leg buckles, and he immediately starts backing off. And then, of course, we saw him get hurt in the Kevin Lerena fight with a shot on top of the head. He was down in that fight several times. Not everybody's most vulnerable point is the chin. For some fighters, it's the temple. For some fighters, it's a body shot. For Dubois, it seems to be shots on top of his head. But anyway, his chin seems solid. We saw that in the Hrgovic fight. In the Lartey fight even, he took good shots on the chin. So he might have that advantage over AJ. And all of these things combined give him a real chance in the fight. I think the outcome of this fight will hinge on whether Anthony Joshua can hurt Daniel Dubois sufficiently to discourage him from coming forward and being aggressive. That's what it's going to hinge on. AJ is not going to be able to sit back and warm into the fight from round 1 at his own pace. No, Dubois is going to try to stick it on him like a young fighter should, particularly against the guy in AJ who hasn't had the best stamina in the past. He's learned to pace himself better over the years, but he'll never be able to match Daniel Dubois for punch output. The way AJ wins the fight is by catching Dubois early, hurting him, and therefore discouraging him from coming forward. At that point, AJ can slow the pace down, control the fight from the outside, use that left hook, the fast right hand, the uppercut, the jab. He's the taller fighter with the longer arms, right? And he's the better mover too. I mean, Dubois can move, he doesn't have slow feet, but he's more robotic than AJ. People used to accuse AJ of being like a Frank Bruno. No, Dubois is actually more like a Frank Bruno in his biomechanics. AJ's not as stiff as that. And AJ can get up on his toes and move around a bit better, a bit more fluidly than Daniel Dubois can. But as I say, in order for AJ to be able to use those attributes, he's going to need to hurt Dubois. And I'm talking about early. I do think AJ hits quite a bit harder than Hrgović, and he's a very accurate puncher, Anthony Joshua. That's one of the things that's kind of underrated about him, is how accurate his shots are. You generally don't see Anthony Joshua wasting a lot of punches. I would say he's got the hand speed advantage on Daniel Dubois, Anthony Joshua, and I think all round he's a more skillful fighter. That's not to say that Dubois can't box with AJ, because he absolutely can. There's an old adage in boxing: you can't hook with a hooker, but you can jab with a jabber. And although AJ's always had a good jab, I'm not sure his jab's ever been as good as Daniel Dubois' jab, as powerful as Dubois' jab is. So that's going to be a key punch for Dubois in the fight, the left jab, especially if AJ does hurt him early in the fight, if Dubois comes rushing in recklessly, as he did against Hrgović in the first round, where he actually got lit up like a Christmas tree. I mean, Hrgović landed an enormous number of right hands on Daniel Dubois in the first 2 rounds of the fight. In the second round, Hrgović actually threw over 80 punches. That's crazy for a heavyweight of that size. And it certainly contributed to him slowing down relatively early in the fight, because that type of punch output is not sustainable for most men the size of Filip Hrgović. So Dubois does get hit. He is vulnerable down the middle to straight right hands and uppercuts, and we know AJ's got a great uppercut. Dubois also has kind of unusual biomechanics in that he seems to find it very difficult to tuck his elbows in. He fights with his elbows flared out, which is uncharacteristic of a fighter with his level of experience. Daniel Dubois has been boxing since he was a little boy. He's not somebody who picked up the sport a few years ago. He was raised to be a boxer. But yeah, he's got this strange biomechanical thing where he's got these flared out elbows. And that makes his guard more porous, easier to find holes in. So as I say, I think it's a fascinating fight, and it all comes down to AJ's ability to hurt Dubois. If he can hurt Dubois and therefore discourage him early on, then I think AJ wins, because I think he's the better boxer of the two. He's obviously the more experienced. He'll still have to contend with Dubois' jab, but I think if he can put Dubois in his box early, he'll be able to chip away at him and then maybe stop him in the mid to late rounds. But if AJ cannot repel Dubois' early aggression, if he can't discourage him, either because Dubois is able to take his power, or maybe Dubois tightens his defense up between now and then, such that AJ is not able to get through his guard. If that happens, then there is a very real possibility that Anthony Joshua gets knocked out. Not just loses, but gets knocked out, because he will not be able to stay the pace that Dubois is capable of setting when he's confident and comfortable. So those are my provisional thoughts on this rumored fight. If I had to lean towards a winner, I'd lean towards AJ, maybe 55-45, something like that. And that's really based on, as I've already described, Anthony Joshua being able to hurt Dubois early and put him in his box, make him reluctant to throw as many punches as he wants to throw because he's scared of the counters. I've got slightly more confidence in that happening than Dubois being able to avoid AJ's counters, take AJ's power in the early rounds, and continue to attack with reckless abandon. So yeah, I see it maybe 55-45 in AJ's favor. But it's a good fight, it's an exciting fight, and it's a fight which I do not see lasting the distance. I mean, anything's possible, but I think there's a very, very high chance that that fight ends in not just a knockout, but a devastating knockout. So as I say, those are my provisional thoughts. Give me yours in the comment section below. And just to let you know before I go, my post-fight reviews for Craig Richards versus Willie Hutchinson, Ray Ford versus Nick Bull, Hamza Shiraz versus Amma Williams, and Dimitri Bivol versus Malik Zanard are all up on my Patreon page right now. Just download the Patreon app from the Play Store or the App Store, head on over to my page and select the tier called the Boxing Brotherhood. That's where you'll find all my exclusive boxing content. There's all sorts on there, including film study, where I analyze video footage of various fights and what have you. We've also got a members chat over there. There's no contract, no commitment. You can cancel at any time, just like Netflix, but it's a hell of a lot cheaper. All the relevant links are in the description box below. So yeah, get clicking and I'll catch you over there.